Industry studies estimate that up to 80% of new Amazon FBA sellers never make it. Most quit within the first year, quietly, without ever telling anyone why. But here's the contradiction almost nobody explains properly. The sellers in the other 20% aren't just surviving. Some of them are running real six-figure businesses. So what actually separates the 80% who fail from the 20% who don't? It's almost never the product itself, and it's definitely not luck. And it's not just Amazon. The same pattern shows up in dropshipping, print on demand, and nearly every other side hustle sold online as an easy way to make money fast. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly where that money disappears to, and why the same mistake keeps repeating itself year after year, seller after seller. Number 1. The story almost always starts the same way. Someone sees a video promising passive income, picks a trending product, and orders a few hundred units from a factory overseas. Usually they never actually held the product before ordering it. They saw it perform well in someone else's video, assumed the same result would repeat for them, and wired the money. A few weeks later the shipment arrives, and only then do they notice 5 other sellers already listing the exact same product, all competing on price within days of each other. The math looks simple on paper. Buy a product for $4, sell it for $20, and the profit seems obvious, right up until the first real sale actually goes through. That's when the real invoice shows up, full of charges nobody mentioned in the video that convinced them to start in the first place. By the time the first shipment sells through, the seller often realizes the actual profit is a fraction of what the spreadsheet promised, if there's any profit left at all. Most don't quit after one bad month. They reorder, hoping the next batch performs better, and that's usually the point where the real damage to their savings begins. What almost nobody accounts for going in is the time cost either: answering customer messages, fixing listings, responding to reviews, on top of a full-time job most sellers still have. Number 2, the hidden fees, one by one, with the real numbers. First, Amazon's referral fee, a straight cut of every single sale, ranging from about 8% up to 45% depending on the category, though most sit around 15%. That fee alone means a product selling for $20 can lose $3 before Amazon has even touched the box, just for the privilege of being listed on the platform. Then there's the fulfillment fee, what Amazon charges to pick, pack, and ship each order, typically running from about $3 up to $6.50 per standard item in 2026. On top of that, storage fees, charged by the cubic foot every month, roughly 78 cents from January through September, jumping to $2.40 in the final quarter of the year. If inventory sits unsold for too long, long-term storage fees kick in, adding $6.90 per cubic foot per month once a product has been sitting for over a year. And then there's the return processing fee. For products with free returns, Amazon charges sellers a fee equal to the original fulfillment cost, meaning a single return can cost a seller twice. Add inbound placement fees for moving inventory between warehouses, plus charges for labeling and prep work, and these smaller fees alone can quietly erase most of a product's margin. And here's the one most beginners forget entirely: advertising. Getting a new listing seen at all usually means running paid ads, and the average seller spends around 30 cents on ads for every dollar of ad-driven sales. Let's actually add it up on one $20 product. Referral fee takes $3, fulfillment takes about $5, storage and prep take another $1 or so, and ads take roughly $4 more. That's already $13 gone from a $20 sale, before the seller has even paid the factory for the product itself, which was rarely free to begin with. On top of all of that, Amazon can also hold back a portion of a new seller's payments in reserve, which squeezes cash flow at exactly the moment a seller needs it most to reorder stock. Once the product cost is subtracted too, the real profit on that $20 sale often lands somewhere between $1 and $3, if the batch sells through at all. And 2026 made things slightly tighter across the board too, with fulfillment fees rising by roughly 8 to 51 cents per unit and a new fuel surcharge added on top of standard shipping costs. Number 3, why some categories are traps and others simply aren't. Clothing and electronics look tempting because of high demand, but they also carry some of the highest return rates on the entire platform. Every one of those returns can trigger a processing fee equal to the original shipping cost, which means a popular clothing product can bleed money even while it looks like it's selling well. Seasonal products carry a different trap entirely. If they don't sell through before the holidays, sellers get hit with both the highest quarterly storage rate and, eventually, the long-term storage surcharge. Fragile or oversized items add yet another layer. Higher fulfillment fees for the extra size and weight, plus a much higher chance of damage claims eating into the margin. Simple, durable, non-seasonal products, tools, kitchen items, home organization tend to avoid most of these traps entirely, which is exactly why so many successful sellers gravitate toward boring products on purpose. Toys and gadgets sit somewhere in the middle, high demand around the holidays, but also crowded with competitors and prone to sudden trend crashes right after the season ends. Electronics add one more layer on top of returns, defect, and safety claims, which can trigger account reviews and even suspensions if too many customers report a faulty batch. There's also a real difference between building a private label brand and simply reselling other brands through wholesale or retail arbitrage, and the fee traps hit each of them differently. Reselling other brands usually means thinner margins from the start, since there's no room to set a premium price, while private label at least gives a seller some control over the number. Number 4, what that 80% number actually means, because this is the part almost nobody explains clearly. Failure rarely means the business completely shuts down overnight. Some research even shows that around 64% of sellers reach some level of profitability within their first year, but reaching a little profit and building a real business are two very different things. For most of that 80%, failure means barely breaking even, or making just enough to justify not quitting yet, while quietly burning through savings month after month. It's a slow leak rather than a dramatic collapse, which is part of why so few sellers ever post about it publicly. There's no single moment that feels worth explaining. That's the piece almost never explained in the videos selling the dream. The scary number and the success stories can both be technically true at the same time. It also explains why the number people quote ranges anywhere from 50% to 95% depending on the study, because everyone is quietly measuring a different definition of failure. Some research even found that fewer than half of sellers reach what most would call a real success rate, somewhere between 11 and 25% return on what they originally invested. Number 5, what the successful 20% actually do differently. They don't pick products based on a gut feeling or a trending video. They pull real sales data before spending a single dollar. They look for steady, boring demand that repeats every month, not a temporary spike that disappears in a few weeks once the trend moves on to something else entirely. They read the negative reviews on competing products on purpose, looking for the exact complaint they can fix, instead of copying whatever already looks popular. And instead of pulling profit out early, most reinvest it straight back into more inventory, which is what actually lets a small account start compounding instead of stalling out. They also test with a small first order instead of betting everything on one large shipment, so a bad product costs them a few $100s in lessons instead of their entire savings. Above all, they obsess over the fees most sellers ignore, tracking every single charge, because in a business with this many small cuts, the winners are usually just the ones doing the math properly. Many of them also treat advertising spend as a real cost to control from day one, instead of an afterthought, watching that percentage as closely as any other line on the balance sheet. Most of them also expect the first product to be a learning expense rather than a guaranteed win, so one bad batch doesn't wipe out the entire plan to keep going. The lesson here goes way beyond Amazon. Almost every side hustle sold online, as easy money works exactly the same way: dropshipping, print on demand, reselling, all of it. Each one has its own version of these same hidden costs: platform fees, advertising spend, returns, and shipping, quietly stacked underneath a headline profit margin that looks great in a thumbnail. Dropshipping stores report similarly rough numbers, with roughly 80 to 90% failing in the first year, mostly from weak supplier vetting rather than a bad idea in the first place. One dropshipping study even found that first-time store owners succeed only around 18% of the time, a number that barely moves even after a previous failed attempt. Print on demand looks gentler on paper, with margins often between 20 and 40%, but sellers using cheaper storefronts can end up earning only a couple of dollars per item after every fee. The videos that sell the dream almost always show the 20% who made it, because a success story gets clicks. Nobody makes a video celebrating the 80% who quietly quit. The businesses that actually survive almost always look boring from the outside, run by people who did the unglamorous math before they ever spent their first dollar. They also tend to underestimate two things far less than everyone else: how much starting capital they actually need, and how many hours a week the business really takes in the beginning. None of that makes for as exciting a thumbnail as a private jet or a stack of cash, which is exactly why it rarely gets mentioned in the videos that sell the dream in the first place. That doesn't mean the whole idea is a scam. Plenty of ordinary people really do build solid income this way. It just usually looks much slower and much less glamorous than advertised. 80% fail, 20% don't, and the difference was never the product. It was always the math nobody bothered to check before they started. If this helped you understand what actually happens behind the scenes, subscribe for more breakdowns like this one, and tell us what side hustle you want us to cover next.